week long, front pages of websites and newspapers have been cluttered with headlines decrying the government's stance on winter fuel payments for pensioners.
And on Tuesday afternoon, we saw the government's policy of means testing the up to £300 payment put to the test in a vote in the House of Commons. The government won comfortably with 348 votes to 228 for a majority of 120. Only one Labour MP voted against the government, but a number quietly abstained.
So we spoke about this on the podcast last week, but Nish, what are your thoughts on this?
Listen, I think the case that I think the Labour Party is trying to make is that by means testing these payments, you can make a meaningful saving by making sure the money doesn't go to people that don't necessarily need it. But I think it is also very difficult because there is always a concern that people will fall between the cracks when you make this kind of cut. And there are people that exist on the borderline that badly need these kind of fuel payments and may lose out over the winter. And also in terms of the saving, it's expected to save between £1.3 billion in 2024, 2025 and £1.5 billion in subsequent years, which given what the government is trying to address is a £22 billion black hole, is a real concern. And my issue with this, and my issue with this kind of rhetoric around this, is this idea that if you're making benefit cuts and you're saying you have to do this because you have to make tough and unpopular choices, my question is always, who are those choices going to be unpopular with? Because regardless of what Keir Starmer says about governments dodging decisions, we've had between 10 and 14 years of unpopular decisions. And I think the government could have saved themselves a huge amount of political misery if they had announced these cuts in concert with, say, changing the structure to capital gains tax or inheritance tax. The Resolution Foundation this week has been urging the government to announce changes to cap gains and inheritance tax and national insurance in next month's budget that would raise more than £20 billion a year for the Treasury, which again, given that the Chancellor was trying to plug a £22 billion hole, feels like a much, much, much more significant figure. And when we talk about unpopular decisions, the question is always, who are these decisions unpopular with? And it may well be that when we come around to the budget, Rachel Reeves does announce a change to those policies. I would say that if you had telegraphed some of those policies in concert with this idea that you're cutting fuel payments to pensioners, you might have saved yourself a hell of a lot of political difficulties. My grandmother is a pensioner, and I also think that if we're looking at the way the pension systems are rolled out, and I think this is true of a lot of benefits, there needs to be a simplification of the way that these things are dealt with and the way that these things are administered. There is simply no way without my mum doing everything, my grandmother would be able to claim benefits she's entitled to.
Like, it's all online as well, isn't it?
It's all online, which obviously I understand is ostensibly designed to make things more straightforward, but you also have to consider who the target audience are of your benefit, of your sort of technical changes. And I also think that there needs to be a simplification of the processes that allow people who are eligible, because there still are a number of pensioners that are eligible for this. And there is an argument being made by some Labour MPs that actually this helps them provide more targeted benefits to the people who need it most.